Ask Mike, brought to you by the Stadium Shop on Razorback in Fayetteville.
Hey there, and welcome into another edition of Ask Mike. I'm Melissa Orange. He is Mike Irwin. This is the first Ask Mike of 2023, so we're going to set the bar high for the year.
And I want to make a statement.
Okay, here we go.
When we do this today, I'm going to ask your opinion for things because
Okay.
I don't want to just sit here and talk the whole time. So anybody out there that gets mad and says this is Ask Mike and Alyssa's butting in, I'm telling her to do that because I had to do it last week because you guys were all in.
Hey, I commend you for reading the questions and the answers.
And I
That
had
was a
to
lot.
sit here for the whole time asking the question and then answering the question. And you don't know this, but in my head, I was going, yeah. I don't like that. I got to bounce everything I do off of other people. So I'm inviting her to be a part of the discussion.
We'll do our best, Mike, but this is exciting. Happy to start off 2023 with a bang and a new Ask Mike. So here we go. Our first question is from Little Wheezy. That's perfect. Little Wheezy, who asked, did you feel the officiating in the Liberty Bowl was as bad as the fans on social media seem to think?
Okay, like a couple of 3 weeks ago, I think I said that truthfully, sometimes I realize that I get a little bit over the top about officials. Because you've watched me watch a game, and I go nutso. And that's not right because I don't really believe that officials have an agenda. I think they make mistakes like anybody makes mistakes. Coaches make mistakes, players make mistakes, media people make mistakes. We all make mistakes. It's a hard thing to officiate games. So in general, I don't think officials are bad, but I do think sometimes they're not as good as other times. This was a bad job, and for a lot of reasons. But the part on the two calls that were confirmed, that's not really officials. That's the dude up in the booth. And I think you know this because I was able to find out that I guess they do this for lower level bowls. They don't really have a committee or a bunch of people in a remote room somewhere. This was just a guy up in the press box with one guy up there looking at it. And he apparently just went, I don't want to embarrass these guys. Whatever they say, I'll go along with it because he didn't overrule two calls that should have been overruled. It's pretty bad when the NCAA National Supervisor of Officials, the guy in Indianapolis, looks at it. He's the top referee in the entire country, and he looks at that targeting call and went, nah, it's not targeting. So that's bad. But there were other things, right? I mean, what about the miss
fumble
on
that wasn't a
Satanga?
fumble?
Yeah, the fumble that wasn't a fumble, which they reviewed and then upheld it. There was the Satanga probably touchdown catch where he's on the goal line and this guy just pushes him off to the side and catches it himself. So it's an interception based on a pass interference, which, again, they just missed that. Okay. What about the
unsportsmanlike conduct on
the wide receiver?
On Quincy McAdoo?
Was it McAdoo?
I think it was McAdoo celebrating his interception, maybe. I don't remember what it was.
Well, there was another one when the offense was on the field. I think it was one of the wide receivers, and I saw him
get it was Matt Landers, maybe?
Gosh, no, it was one of the freshmen, I think. Who's the wide receiver, the punt return guy? His name?
Oh, Bryce Stevens. Yes.
I just see him go flying backwards, and then all of a sudden, he gets flagged, and that killed the drive. To me, they got the numbers back mixed up or the players mixed up. So there was all this crazy stuff that went on. So, yeah, even though I will generally say officiating probably wasn't as bad as people thought, this was a game in which it was really bad. That's my opinion.
Okay.
I don't know. You were there. I don't know what you thought.
It was a little all over the place. There was that unsportsmanlike conduct where they were celebrating, and I thought it was after Quincy's interception, but I might be wrong. But I remember being like, really? Like, you're going to call for celebrating an interception or something?
Yeah.
It was definitely one of those things where it was just like, that seems overboard to me, but that whole game was wild. So
yeah,
it was what it was.
Game.
Yes. Pig's Feet wants to know our next question. Did you lose money because of this officiating crew? Worst called game I have ever seen.
It sounds like Pig's Feet lost money to me. And I look, for all of you out there that went with the line and you went with, you think Arkansas is going to win big or whatever. and you lost money because they didn't win as big as they were supposed to, I have sympathy for you. I do. I mean, because you got screwed on that deal, because that was basically a game that was completely winnable, not close, a lot like the Ole Miss game that everybody complained about, which never really got that close. But then you have that one stupid call that suddenly changes everything. So then that causes people to lose money. Now, as far as me, I don't know why I say this, but my dad, who was a newspaper man, I had a lot of respect for, but his newspaper, he never made money off of it. He just did it because it was cool and fun to do. We lived off what my mother made as a secretary to the city manager in my hometown. And so money was tight, and my dad gambled. And sometimes he gambled with money we didn't have. And I watched her deal with that. So I grew up basically thinking, I'm not gambling, and I never have.
I understand. I
don't.
understand that. Yeah, I do. There are a lot of people in that situation. Next question that comes from Simplify asking, can you walk us through the process the athletic department takes when addressing poor or incompetent officiating?
Well, regardless of whether the officiating is great, terrible, whatever, there's always a review process in the SEC anyway, for all coaches that are involved in a game. They have a form they fill out, and they send it into the SEC office, and then it's reviewed by the supervisor of officials, and if there's an issue, they will get back to the coach, and sometimes they have indeed suspended crews if the situation's bad enough. But what they've always said about this, or at least we've learned about this through coaches, is they do that and they don't want coaches commenting about things related to officiating after games. This is why Sam Pittman, for instance, when he was asked, did you see that review and what did you think? Did you see the other review and what did you think? He said, I like my money, because you can be fined for doing that. And every once in a while we'll see a coach that he's so mad he doesn't mind being fined. But this is the process that they go through. And it has nothing to do with whether it's just so terrible that they do it. They just do it automatically. Mm-hmm. And so if it's bad, there's going to be a review process on it.
Yeah. Next question, Hog Dogger wants to know, who would have initiated the complaint from U of A about questionable calls in a game? Does the process start with Pittman, then go to Juracek? I'm just wondering how a wrong call made it to the NCAA committee and gets reversed. The refs got a lot wrong this game. And you kind of explained that.
Yeah, but in this one, I think it was a little bit different. And look, the university didn't comment on it. We just got this note or notice that the NCAA had reversed the call, which to me is unusual. I'm sure it's probably happened before, but I don't remember that. I'm just guessing that what happened was that it really revolved around Quincy McAdoo, that they did not want this hanging over his head in the first game first half of the first game of the next year, when in effect it was obvious that there was no targeting in the first place, and if there was no targeting, there certainly shouldn't have been a suspension. So I think they approached it from that standpoint. We won the game, we don't care about that, but we don't want this kid punished for something that didn't happen. So I think Juracek probably went to Greg Sankey at the SEC office, then he contacted the NCAA. They had the national supervisor of officials review this play, and then he came out with his ruling. So
pretty quickly,
I think that's pretty much how it happened. And look, for Quincy McAdoo's sake, I applaud everybody involved. I've criticized the NCAA, I've criticized the SEC office at times, but this is how it should work. I think that the process, everybody along the way realized that, this is going to hang over his head all during the spring. He knows. It's like he did something wrong when he didn't. So they got that out of the way, and now he doesn't have to deal with it.
Jalen Catalon had to sit out the first quarter of the Cincinnati game.
Yeah, I think he did.
He did, because he had targeting against Penn State.
Right.
So,
right. So
you just hate it for these
players.
players.
You don't want that to deal with it all the next spring and summer and all that nonsense.
Exactly. All right, Slobber Slob wants to know, just counted 24 Hogs in the transfer portal. Seems excessive. A couple of them played really well in the Liberty Bowl. What is going on here?
Yeah, I get a lot of this. I've even had private messages from friends of mine going, oh, this is excessive. What's happening here? Look, in his first press conference after he got back here, after the Missouri game, and a lot of people apparently didn't remember this, Sam Pittman warned us all. He said there's going to be a wave of transfers before the bowl, there's going to be another wave after the bowl, and then there may be some in the spring after spring football is over. So why is he doing this? I've been told that he understands, it all started with the NCAA uncapping the number of transfers you could bring in. There was a time before this recruiting period where you could only bring in a certain number of transfers, just like you could only bring in a certain number of freshman signees. They've gotten rid of all that because of the portal. So theoretically, you could get rid of every player on your team.
You could be LSU basketball and have a brand new
yes, and it's happened in basketball. It almost happened at Arkansas. Yeah. So he theoretically, if he thought he could get 85 people out of the portal that were better than the 85 he has, he could do that. Well, he's not doing anything like that. Yeah. But the 2 dozen or so that are gone, I'm not going to sit here and say he wanted all of them gone. They did lose 3 or 4 or 5 players that they would just as soon they not leave. But here's what's happening. There's a combination of things. Most of the time when a player leaves, the coach has sat down and said, look, I'm not going to force you to leave, but we're bringing in somebody at your position, and there's a pretty good likelihood you're not going to play. So they will help them in the portal to find another place. Then there are people that get bought. I mean, that's what's going on right now. Somebody offers you a lot of money. I think a certain school tried to get KJ Jefferson last year. They offer you some
Mike Woods.
Yes, so they offer you money, and sometimes they take it, especially if you're going to be a 5th-year player or you're going to use your COVID year that's available to you and you can get some good NIL money, and you say to yourself, I'm probably not going to get drafted, so this is my last chance to make money off football. Yeah, I'll go somewhere else. Sure. And I can't argue against that. Yeah. So in some cases, that's happened. Some of these guys, you have a coach like Michael Shearer, who's a linebackers coach, and you could see this coming a mile away. He was named the defensive coordinator. Oh, gee, who was his boss just until recently? Barry Odom. Barry Odom's the new head coach at UNLV. Oh, he's now the defensive coordinator interim at Arkansas. He's probably going to be the defensive coordinator there. So if a linebacker hits the portal, it's not for certain, but I wouldn't be shocked to see him end up at UNLV.
Dow Loggins, Trey Knox.
Exactly.
Perfect example.
So some of that is what's going on. Yeah. But most of it is Sam Pittman saying, look, there's a priority to this. There's an urgency. Look, he knew he had to rebuild the talent level here. It was down a little. You got to build the program up. And it was okay the first 2 years, but now this year it was like we want to compete with the SEC big boys. I personally believe that what happened was they got a bunch of injuries, and that's what caused this. I don't think his coaching got worse, but a lot of people thought that it did. But I think his position now, Sam Pittman's, is, okay, I'm not going to coach here forever. I got to get something going here, and this is much faster. And he said this. He said, I do not prefer to do recruiting this way. I prefer to go high school senior, develop them for 2 years, and then have them to play for you, start for you for 2 years. That's the best process. But you can turn things around faster this way. I'm going to do it this way. Yeah. So the only thing you have to do as a fan is to watch what goes on, because it's starting this week. We've already got some guys. Look what they did with Criswell. I talked with that last week. They've solved a big problem from last year. They've now got a backup quarterback that's the same style of the quarterback they had.
Got a big defensive lineman from Pitt, got that offensive lineman from Florida here. I think for fans, my advice with the transfer portal is this. It is excessive, but that excessiveness spans the whole entire country in college football. So don't look necessarily on the people leaving. A lot of these kids in this 24 number are kids who didn't play and should probably go play somewhere else. You see kids who are now going to play at Liberty or Boston College. You know, I know Keytron Jackson's going to Baylor. Some kids are getting opportunities at some smaller D1 schools to play, and they can actually play. There are those guys like Jalen Catalon you don't want to leave. But what you need to look at is the number going out versus the number coming in.
Absolutely.
So
and then
what's going
and the
out
quality.
Versus what's coming in, and look at what's coming in, and it's excessive all over the country. And so the best way to look at it is, okay, but what have we got coming in? And that's where that balance is going to be, and that'll determine whether or not your team is better or worse off because of the transfer portal, in my opinion.
And I think Pittman is doing this more than some other coaches. I'm not saying he's the only one, but I think he's really going into it full bore. Mm-hmm. And so we're not going to be able to evaluate this until spring football is over, because that's also a transfer time. Mm-hmm. If you go through spring football, the NCAA is now saying if you don't feel like you did what you had to do to guarantee yourself a starting position, you can transfer. And that's where you get a lot of people. That's when Drew Sanders came in. So, This is how this stuff happens.
Yeah. Pittman said he was ready to attack the transfer portal, so we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
All right. Logan County Hog says, love CSP, Sam Pittman, but during the second half of our games, there's no enthusiasm or fire whatsoever on the offensive side of the ball. The O-line becomes very lazy and undisciplined. How do you think the players would respond to some emotion from him?
Well, first of all, I don't think this has been a first half, second half thing. I think they've been inconsistent. And honestly, when you look at other teams, even in the college football playoff, those wonderful playoff games we saw, those 2 games, there were inconsistencies in there. One minute, either of those teams, it doesn't matter which one you're watching, their offense is going through the defense like knife through butter, and then all of a sudden they can't do anything. It just went back and forth. For the longest time, we thought, Stetson Bennett, what's wrong with you? You can't do anything right. And then he could do everything right. There's always inconsistencies. Here's the problem I have, and I'll bounce this off you. I've never, and I hear this a lot, I saw this game and I could tell, I watch a game and I don't know what's going on a lot of times because I'm not down there on the field. I'm not in their heads. I can't know that an offensive lineman suddenly decides to be lazy and not play. There can be so many things that influence a play. It can be the wrong play. We've seen Arkansas be going down the field. All of a sudden, one play kills a drive because you lose 15 yards on it. That's not to say Kendall Briles doesn't know what he's doing. Sometimes that play, the other team just snarfs it out. So there's so many things that can cause you to be inconsistent. I don't think that Arkansas's inconsistency in certain things were limited to the second half, because I saw it happen in the first half. And I also think that you can't just say it was because people in the O-line were lazy.
I think this. Sam Pittman, if anything, does not tolerate laziness.
Right.
And especially as an former O-line coach, if he saw what you say you see in the offensive linemen being lazy, you're not like missing a block, or you didn't strain through that block, or you missed your assignment. That's not being lazy. That just happens. Mike, you talk about mistakes. People make mistakes.
That's right.
But he can recognize lazy versus mental mistakes. They're 2 very different things. And I think that if someone was lazy, they'd been pulled immediately, and we never saw that. So
right.
I think, back to your point, I agree with the inconsistencies were something that we saw throughout the season. It wasn't just tailored to,
second half.
Insert offensive lineman decide to take the play off or something like that. All right, Luke Skywalker wants to know, I saw the Razorbacks snapping the ball with over 20 seconds left on the play clock multiple times in the third quarter. He's talking about the Liberty Bowl. When you are winning by 3 scores, there is no reason to ever do this. Run it down to 5 seconds each time, and it would have shaved off the last 3 minutes of the game.
Oh, see, because now this is an interesting point. I'm glad this question got asked, because this is the opposite of what most people think. What were most fans complaining about? Pittman got up a big lead and shut it down, but if you go back and look, you don't shut it down when you're running a tempo offense. So the fact that they were out there in the third quarter running their tempo offense means that they weren't shutting it down. There were just certain things that happened where they didn't make first down. Yeah. So the issue here is, which of those things is the right thing to do? Okay, you're up 3 touchdowns in the third quarter. Is it okay at that point to kind of shut things down a little bit and run the play clock down each time and burn up a lot of clock? Because we saw them do that against Ole Miss, and it worked. They went several 3-and-outs in the fourth quarter against Ole Miss, but had more time of possession than Ole Miss when they weren't even, they were punting because they ran that shot clock down each time. So is that the way to do it? Or, as some fans say, when you get up by 3 or 4 touchdowns in the third quarter, do you just keep trying to score? So which is it? And to me, it's an individual thing. It's up to the coach. Yep. There is no one right way to do that. That Ole Miss game never really got close, and this one wouldn't have gotten close except for that stupid call, which should have been reversed, which was a fumble on a reverse that should have given them a first down. Yeah. And then it's over. Yeah.
Razorbacker 3 wants to know, is Amari Harris really as big as listed at 6'7", 340? He looked very fit and played great. Freshman did play really well.
Yeah, look, I've never stood next to him with a tape measure. I didn't weigh him when they weighed him. I'm going to assume that the athletic department knew what they were doing when they sized him up. Here's the thing about this. This guy, to me, epitomizes what happened in this bowl game. Because here's a guy, as a high school senior, was maybe their best recruit. He was listed as number 3 in the state of Arkansas. He's a beast. And everybody wanted him. All kinds of teams wanted him. Georgia wanted him. I'm not sure about LSU. I know that Alabama wanted him. A&M wanted him. A bunch of teams wanted this guy. Arkansas got him. Okay, but look, you're an offensive lineman. I don't care how good you are. You probably aren't going to play as a true freshman. It's the same reason you don't have one and dones for the NFL. You're not ready physically. So he comes in and he gets like 6 offensive snaps going into that. But now, because you've got people missing for this bowl game, Tykees Crawford gets put over at the right tackle position and he gets hurt right at the start of the game. And now Harris has to come in and play. And he took like 60 or 70 snaps. And now the coaches are going, whoa, we didn't realize he could do that. So what does that mean for next year? It means now this kid's got a shot at a starting job, and he redshirted. So they've got him for 4 years. So this is one of the big success stories of that bowl game.
Okinawa Hug asks, what is your opinion of players who were preferred walk-ons, got the full ride, then go into the portal? In my honest opinion, it seems like this is a slap in the face to Coach Pittman.
Well, the only one I can think of that fits that is Simeon Blair. And look, you got to talk about the fact that this guy was a 5th-year senior. He had a COVID year available, and he was very honest up front. He said, I have not decided what I'm going to do, but he stayed for the bowl game. And some of the younger players said he really helped us. All of these seniors did. So he did what you would expect him to do. Now, with his COVID year, it could be anything. He could be getting money from somebody else, portal money, and he knows he's not going to the NFL. So I'll take this portal money. You know, here's a guy that was a former walk-on. Okay, gets a college scholarship, but you can't blame him for wanting to get money if somebody offered him. Or maybe he will end up over at UNLV, or maybe he will end up at South Carolina. We don't know where he's headed. Yeah. But I have no criticism of what he did.
I no criticism at all about Simeon Blair. Again, like you said, biggest thing for him, he stayed and played for this team. That shows his dedication, and I think right there you thank him for 5 years on the Hill. But you also mentioned earlier in Ask Mike that he might have had a conversation with Pittman already before the bowl game, and Pittman said, we're bringing guys in, and I don't know, Simeon, if you're going to be starting next year. And he still stayed, and now he's going to go play somewhere. Like you said, it could be anywhere. He's from Pine Bluff. He could go and play at UAPB maybe and stay closer to home if he wanted to and still get NIL money. But here's the deal. I don't think that's a slap in the face at all. He put 5 years in here. Just because you're a walk-on doesn't mean that you don't deserve to fight and earn a scholarship like every other walk-on has behind you. But then if you're told that maybe to end your you're already graduated, end your 6 years somewhere else because you might not play here, that's okay. And I will say this, one of the biggest and most criticized players on the defense. So you're going to sit here and say that it's a slap in the face to Coach Pittman? Well, what if he stays one more year so you can criticize him some more for missed mistakes? I think Simeon Blair deserves to go play somewhere else and let him play somewhere else. He's a good kid.
Absolutely.
Okay. Space Hog says, I heard that Deion Sanders was once considered for the Razorback head coaching job. Any truth to that? Also, any comment on his hiring by Colorado?
Yeah, this is a little hazy in my mind, but I think maybe the Athletic or somebody wrote an article and they found out about this and talked to Yurachek, and Hunter Yurachek admitted that Deion Sanders called him when they were looking after they fired Chad Morris. And so he interviewed him, and he said he was really impressed with what he had to say. The problem was, at that point, his coaching experience was strictly limited to high school. And so, you know, Yurachek said, as much as I might have been tempted to give him a shot, in my position, you can't hire a guy that's never been a college head coach. So he passed on that. Now, what is my opinion of Colorado? I think they may have hit the mother lode. That might have been the right guy at the right time because he's tearing it up out there in recruiting right now, and Colorado may end up with something they haven't had a long time. Now, the issue with beyond the recruiting is, okay, it's one thing what he's done up till now as a college coach, but what's going to happen in the Pac-12? It's not the toughest conference right now, but they may end up back in the Big 12. There's all kinds of rumors that the Big 12 is going to start try to pick teams out of the Pac-12. So he could end up in a pretty tough situation, and we'll see if his coaching matches his recruiting.
Yeah. I tell you what, I love Deion. I love Deion. Is this the kind of the same predicament that FSU was in after firing Willie Taggart? Again, you fire Willie Taggart and Chad Morris the same year. Florida State would have loved to bring Deion home, but there was no college success there. And now everyone's like, well, bring him back. And like now Mike Norvell's, killing it right now.
Sure.
And you can't just fire Mike Norvell just because you want to bring Deion back because he had a great couple of years with Jackson State. But I love seeing Deion have success from afar because he's really fun to watch.
And what you really enjoyed in that bowl game was that his player, the big guy, dropped a pass at the end that was right in his hands. It cost him the game. And did you see the locker room thing where he sat down with that guy and he said, "We didn't get here by ourselves, and we won't leave here by ourselves. Every guy on this team dropped that pass. Every guy on this team does everything that one guy does." Yeah. And that was a tremendous thing to say that coaches don't say often enough. Look at what happened to Stetson Bennett after what right there on TV. He's just getting chewed out by his head coach right there on TV. So look, this is the guy that said, "You didn't drop that pass by yourself. Every guy on this team dropped that pass because we don't do anything individually on this team. We do it as a team." I thought it was awesome.
He is nothing if not a motivational speaker for sure. All right, Hogdoor back in action again. Has another question. Any word on Dominique Johnson coming back?
We haven't. The last thing we heard on him. Now, keep in mind he had a torn ACL in 2021. He came back and was supposed to be okay for 2022, and it happened again. So he's having to rehab again. Now that would cause some people to, if you look at what happened with Catalan, you might say, well, he just might want a fresh start. But there's been no indication of that so far. He hasn't said anything to indicate that he's not coming back. Now the running back room is loaded, and they're bringing another really good one. There's a freshman that signed with Arkansas. I think he's already signed in the early signing period, and he's out in one of these all-star games tearing it up right now. So you got yet another running back coming in. And we just saw what happened in the bowl game. Your number 3 running back just came in and was fantastic. So that room is deep.
Yeah.
So what does Dominic do? I don't know. I'm thinking he's coming back, and Sam Pittman loves him. Why? Because he loves him in the red zone. Because he's a physical runner that's got good quickness, and he knows how to score when he gets. And Arkansas's had a problem in the red zone.
Yeah, man, he was fun to watch when he was on. I'd love to see him back again next year. Marty Bird's proxy says everyone certainly wants Nick Smith back. In the event he's unable to return, how important is it for an additional consistent scorer to develop? Can we make a deep run as we've made in the past 2 years with the status quo offensively?
First of all, I don't have any inside information, so don't read anything into this. I just sort of have a feeling that at some point Nick Smith Jr. is going to come back. I don't know when it is. I think they want to be very sure that whatever that problem is with the knee, which apparently is not a surgery thing, that if it clears up and he's okay for 2 or 3 weeks, maybe they'll try it again. I don't know. I can't say for sure. But how do you develop a scorer? We don't just develop a scorer. I think what we've seen with this team, there is so much talent that one guy's going to score a lot of points one night, next night it might be Black,
Jimmy Graham or Jalen Graham or
Council. So they've got options. However, I said this before and I'll say it again. The loss of those 2 guys, Trevin Bazile and Nick Smith Jr., the conference is so loaded at the top with good teams. They're going to lose some games this year that they might have won with those 2 guys. It's not that they're not good without them. They would have been better with them. And I think that LSU game might have been one of them because they just didn't get anybody shooting well that night. So I think that's going to continue to be an issue. But look, don't go bonkers on us here, because winning the SEC, we've seen what that means come NCAA tournament time the last few years. That doesn't get you anywhere. I mean, you can be one and done after winning the SEC or win a game and lose a game. Arkansas has gone deep into the tournament because Musselman has developed this team late in the year. And so we'll see. This team is way ahead of where they were before. I don't think going to LSU as good as they were and losing a close game. And look, there was a play where I don't think it was a slap per se. Well,
on Anthony Black.
It was a tap. and then another tap.
He kind of slapped him in the face.
I think there was a little bit of flopping that second time, but the point is you can't put your hands on a player's face. I don't care how hard you hit him. That should have been an intentional foul. He was clearly trying to mess him up one way or another. So that should have been a foul. Arkansas was down by 1. They go to the line, make those 2 shots, they're up, and they get the ball back. So that's how close they were to winning that game.
Yeah.
So don't freak out. It doesn't matter. We'll see what happens. They might lose this game to Missouri. Wednesday night. Missouri's really good.
Another 11 well, they were 11-1 when the season started, but they're rolling up there in Columbia. That's going to be a big test. Then they go to Auburn. They've got a lot coming up. And so I don't think a loss here, peppered in here or there, is going to dictate any kind of run.
The whole issue is to be ready at the end of the year.
Yep. And we have seen this team go through lulls and get back out and then obviously make it to Elite Eights and back-to-back years. So no panic button there yet. All right, Dr. Starks asks, what are your top 5 favorite bowl games since you've been covering the Hogs? Holy moly. And could be your favorite based on outcome, location, or memorable moments. Here we go. Buckle up. Number 5.
Yeah, okay. I'm going to surprise some people with number 5.
Okay.
People are going to say I'm a homer, but I'm going to go with the 2022 Liberty Bowl. And I say that because of the way this Arkansas team, with so many starters missing and terrible officiating, beat Kansas not once but twice. So that's my number 5.
Okay.
Number 4.
All right.
The 2000 Cotton Bowl. Houston Nutt doing his best, whipping up the anti-Longhorn frenzy in Dallas, and Arkansas embarrasses Texas in its own state. Man, if you're a Texas hater like me, that was hard to beat.
Number 3.
Number 3, the 2012 Cotton Bowl. Bobby Petrino's best team at Arkansas beats Kansas State in Jerry World. I love Jerry World. That was a great Cotton Bowl because of the venue. The Cotton Bowl there is much better than I'm a traditionalist, but come on, that old Cotton Bowl, no, this was a better place to play it. So I really liked that game.
All right, number 2.
Number 2, the 76 Cotton Bowl. That was my first bowl covering Arkansas, and Arkansas went 10-2 in that season. Frank Broyles' last bowl win, 31-10 over Georgia. And number 1, what else? The 78 Orange Bowl. Arkansas destroys Oklahoma 31-6. 11-1. The Hogs finished number 3 in the nation. What's wrong with you voters? They should have been number 1. But I loved the Orange Bowl. Didn't like Lou that much, but I did like the bowl game.
He loves the Cotton Bowl. If there's any kind of rant that you can get Mike Irwin on, it's talking about how wonderfully run the Cotton Bowl is, and they're great to the media, and the food is good, and everything is great, and I love it, and I'm surprised this isn't all Cotton Bowls.
The fans don't see what we see at the Cotton Bowl. They've got a whole entire hotel they reserve for it. This is a fancy hotel. This is people that have big bucks. And they put us in there, and it's like funny because there's still people in there that paid a lot of money to stay there, and they're walking around with weirdos like us, and they're going, what are up with all these weird guys? But they've got this really cool media room where they have great food. You go in there, and there's a buffet, and there's all kinds of stuff. And then they got video games and computers. And guys are over there shooting foosball and doing all this crazy stuff.
Yeah.
And some of these people bring their family in there. I saw something so funny one time because you've got the waiters in this room, and they've got these little checkered vests on, and they're used to dealing with people with money, and so they're coming around dealing with your table. And some media guy brought his family, and they had kids, and they just made a mess of that whole table, and they got up and left. And this guy walked up and just went, what is this? Looked like Higgins in the Magnum PI.
Oh,
like,
my
this is terrible.
That's funny.
So I love the Cotton Bowl. It's awesome.
Golly, that is fun.
I have to say, I left out the best bowl of all is clearly the 65 Cotton Bowl.
Okay.
But I was a junior in high school, and I didn't even cover that for the student newspaper because we didn't have a student newspaper, so no, I didn't cover that.
All right, last but not least, got any New Year's resolutions, Mikey?
Oh, New Year's resolutions. I've got to unstress.
Yes.
I've got to be.
Roll your shoulders back.
I got to be calm. I've got to deal with this basketball season. I've already got myself geared up. Don't get too excited. And then baseball. You know how nutso I get in baseball. Like I'm mad at because they're losing to LSU or somebody, and I'm all mad, and I don't like Ole Miss. I'm just going to be. I'm going to de-stress.
De-stress. I like it. That's a good one. We should all take note of that.
But
all right,
you
thanks.
will be the judge of that because whether I really do it or not, because you will see it.
Probably not. Probably not, Mikey. You know, what do they say? Can't teach an old dog new tricks.
Well, I'm going to try.
Okay.
We'll talk about it.
That's going to do it for another Ask Mike. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week.